My name's Anissa. I am a retired bedside nurse turned virtual assistant, and I can be found on many platforms because I also am a travel consultant. So you can find me at considerate underscore insights or sleep underscore work underscore travel at Instagram.
Perfect, perfect. So take us right from the very beginning, Anissa. How did you get started in this, and what is the genesis of your journey?
The genesis of my journey is when I was right out of high school. My plan was actually to become a photographer. I was going to go to um, basically try to go to different schools and see what had the best program. But because of society telling me, like, you're very quiet, how are you going to do that? Like, how are you going to make an income? Are you really going to make an income with photography? So at the last minute, it was a day of orientation at Cal State Long Beach, and I decided to switch majors and go into nursing. My mom's actually a nurse, so it felt like the safest, most guidable journey for me, and I don't regret it at all. I love all the friendships I made. I grew into myself as a nurse, and I learned to use my voice during that time. And then I became a nurse at a county hospital for about 3 years. And then I did some travel nursing because the county hospital was, in my opinion, not being managed the best that it could. And I was tired of fighting against the system. So I became a travel nurse for a couple months. And then after a couple months, I got sick. They found a birth defect in my kidney, and then that led to swelling and caused a bunch of problems. And at the same time, I was having PTSD flashbacks that led to a PTSD diagnosis at the same time. And I ended up with PTSD and fibromyalgia. And so I had to switch gears and figure out a way to create a job that was sustainable for my health and just something that would spark a little bit of passion back into me. And I've always been great at research. And that's kind of how I started. I started while I was sick, bartering with people that needed help researching things. And then I realized that I could throw the label of virtual assistant onto that. So that's how I became a virtual assistant.
So when you're going through the period of being a nurse and then you eventually transition into a virtual assistant, there was like this period of time from what you shared where you're going through some health concerns. A lot of people would have probably given up at that point, or maybe they would have reacted a little bit differently, finding out that they had all these issues that maybe wasn't in their control, especially when you mentioned that people said that, well, you're quiet here, you won't be able to do this, and then you have this feedback, and then you have the health concerns as well. How were you able to navigate all of the whispers from the outside, right? Those who are saying these things about you, and then the whispers in your own mind as you're dealing with your health issues.
I have to say they're not whispers. They're like loud shouts. They're just telling you, "Oh, you can't do this." Oh, and they're not whispers. They're very loud. But I have to say, when I was travel nursing, I decided that I wanted to get some therapy. And so the first therapist that I got, it was very structured in a way that my brain just actually felt more more like I was failing at therapy than anything else. So I searched for something that I could relate to, and I found a program who I love mentioning because they saved my life. And that program is debriefing in the front lines. And I met a wonderful counselor. Her name is Tara, and she she got me through the time that was the hardest. When, like, I don't blame anybody who goes through all sorts of things and wants to give up because, yeah, I did too. It's a process that I'm surprised sometimes that I made it through, but it was definitely therapy. Well, it's a form of therapy. She's a counselor with Tara. She created a program for me in a sense because I didn't feel safe going into an inpatient setting where, like, you're hospital. Like, I cannot, me being a nurse, I, it was a struggle to see myself being hospitalized for PTSD specifically. And I couldn't see it helping me in the long run. And so she created a virtual program where I met with her um, sometimes it was twice a week, I think. And it was the only thing I would look forward to. So that kept me basically alive.
How did that impact your relationships during that time? Maybe romantic, but as well as with other people.
With other people, it definitely impacted my family relationships. I distanced myself, and I am still distant from a lot of family. And my friends, I'm very fortunate to have very close friends that understood, maybe not really understood everything that I went through, but they understood me and they accepted me. And romantic relationships, I've never really been good at, so that's that was never during that time.
You sound
But
like me because there's a time where I couldn't make anything work romantically. I was like, geez, like I'm gonna look to the future and probably build my next girlfriend from whatever I can find. And the reason why I asked that is I know that sometimes some people, when they go through like a health scare or when they go through a medical situation or anything health related, it can feel very isolating, right? Because you may think that sometimes those around you or those you try to lean on, they don't understand what you're going through. They just don't get it. And then there's a flip side where, let's say, for example, you to reach out to someone and they don't comfort you or support you in the way that you're expecting, and they make it worse. Like they'll say something as, "Oh, you know what? You're just going through that. Anissa, just rub some vinegar on it and some oil, and you'll be fine." Like these 1900 remedies, right? But it was good to hear that you had the support of people because that isn't something that a lot of people do have. I know sometimes we can look for love and supports in all the wrong areas. Was there some hesitation for you to maybe reach out, not knowing how the person was going to react when you needed their support?
yes, I deal a lot with that with my mom. It's taken her a long time to recognize that I have fibromyalgia and PTSD, that it's in a form that's very debilitating sometimes. Um, it's it's a hit or miss. I don't know what kind of support I'm going to get. And so I sometimes I tend to distance myself because of that. I don't know what the feeling's going to be like. And just throwing this in there, when I was sick um, and going through therapy with Tara, I realized that there was a part of me that my brain could understand, but my body couldn't. And I had to search for another form of therapy that could help me with the overwhelming feelings that my body was having. And I found somatic therapy and I found Aaliyah Lesko. Um, Amazing support. Also, that's the way I got through it. And when I say it, the PTSD and the fibromyalgia. But going back to my mom, I would get this overwhelming feeling of chaos. It's like this bouncing ball up and down my chest that I don't know what kind of answer or conversation I'm going to get when I talk to her. And so somatic therapy helped me kind of um kind of redirect that energy, and kind of we feel that energy, like, yeah, I can recognize that it's a bouncing ball, and then we work on slowing that ball down and making that basically rewire my nervous system, if that makes sense, to kind of process and move forward into a place where I feel safe.
And
So
what
yeah.
does your safe place look like to you?
Um, my safe place is not something that I see most of the time. It's something that I feel. And it's a feeling of calmness. It's a feeling of peace. It's a feeling of deep rest. Because on the opposite spectrum is the feeling of chaos, the feeling of depression, the feeling of wanting to die. So, yeah, it's the opposite of that.
There are some people that they try to maybe build their safe place, right? Let's say, for example, their house. That could be my safe place. So when I go out in the world and I fight the battles out there, I can come home and I have my peace because my family is there, or my loved ones there, my wife, my husband, or it could be my favorite movie or book, right? But this is my safe place. And it's interesting that you said that it's more of a feeling because that's for me a safe place for myself. It's somewhere in my mind, in my emotions that I feel at peace. I feel comfortable. I feel loved. It could be love from the outside, it could be from someone else, or, but more importantly, it's love for me. So, what are some of the behaviors maybe that you use to get you to a place where you can feel everything that you've ever wanted to feel, despite maybe your mother, for example, not being able to give it to you?
Um, the behaviors, well, the behavior is actively seeking therapy, um, and actively seeking a therapist that is right for me, and creating physical safe space also. So if there's times where my nervous system can't handle my mom, I straight up say, I I can't I can't deal with you right now. Sorry. Bye.
No, that's perfectly fine. I've said the
But
same thing to a whole bunch of people.
I am fortunate enough to live with someone, family member, that is safe and is very understanding. So my home is my safe space. So I am fortunate enough to have a physical safe space.
When you look back, Anissa, to see how far you've come, how impressed and how happy are you to see that you are able to overcome a lot of the things that you have previously gone through?
It feels like a dream. I I can't say that I necessarily feel impressed sort of way. I more feel like damn, I went through a lot and here I am.
You were able to do it, and now you're inspiring others. Like when you come across like people who maybe hear your story or you interact with them, do you see a little bit of yourself in them and you're like, okay, you got this. I know you can do it.
I've always been like that. I've never been able to actually see myself in others in that kind of way because I feel like I'm a harder critic on myself. So when I see others, I'm like, yes, you can do it. Like, I believe in you. But it's not myself being like, oh, yeah, I'm like them. Like, I did it. I progressed. I I always feel like there's some way I could do better, but that's trauma. So
It's like when you pull up an inspirational story. Let's say someone has overcome the death of their family or they have overcome poverty or homelessness. You're like, wow, look at that story. And then, at least for me, when I read those stories and I see some of the behaviors or maybe some of the personality traits, I was like, okay, I identify with that. The determination, the hard work, the never give up attitude. There was a time 2 years ago where I had family members that got sick, and we had to make sure that they were they were there not only for themselves, but we were there for them. And it was an interesting journey because you began to see people come together and pull for this person. Some people got lost, like some people were unable to support. Some people just didn't want to support, right? But to your point, in the example you gave, there's some people that you were unsure what type of support you're gonna get, and because the uncertainty of that person, it made everything chaotic when they were around, right? And then you couldn't trust them with information or definitely the situation. As you're continuing your life with the PTSD, with the fibro, what are some of the things that you're doing today that is helping you continue to live the life that you want to live?
It is continuing to go to my therapies. It's being more mindful of my body and its limits, which is hard because sometimes I really overpush myself and then I'm in a flare for the next couple of days. But it's this it's this walking on a tightrope. It's a balance. I don't know what thing in the day will tip me to one side too far, but I'm walking on a tightrope and I'm going to therapy, trying to find my balance. And I make time for my friends. Like I've always been really luck or blessed, some people call it, to have really good friends, supportive, understanding, friends that make me laugh. And I've had those friends since college, and they've always been a grounding factor for me.
If there's something that you can tell you that group of friends right now, what would it be?
Oh, I love them, and I'm so grateful for them.
Because I'm pretty sure that they love you back because they're helping you through a moment where you needed assistance. I up until maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, I didn't know anyone that was going through that. Most of my friends, if they had any health concerns, they just didn't share it. But I guess most of them are healthy enough. But it seems over the last year and a half, I've come across a number of people that has fibro, and they share it to me. And up until they told me, I wouldn't think they had anything because they were so well at navigating their lives. Sometimes when we hear someone has something, then all of a sudden we start to say, okay, how do you do this? How do you do that? Oh my God, we start to like be overprotective. It's like the helicopter parent, right? Like every step that they take, we're like, are you sure you're doing that? You don't need me to do that? They're fine. They could do it. Right? So I learned a lot speaking to people, especially about this, because I had no idea what it was or how it impacted people. But I know sometimes on their worst day, they're bedridden, like they just want to relax and do things like that when they have a flare up. But most of the time, they're pretty good at keeping it under control and navigating their life. So what advice would you like to give maybe someone like me previously or those out there who, when they're interacting with you or maybe others that suffer from this, how can we be as supportive as possible without maybe becoming like that AKA helicopter parent?
I think open communication is the best possible answer because you could always ask, like, hey, I mean, I understand the helicopter parent part, but I mean, I think it's per person because I don't mind being asked, hey, do you need help with this? No, I'm good. Hey, you, I think just open communication is the best. Also, I really appreciate when people Google fibromyalgia that don't know what it is, like just to get a general understanding. Because, two, You might meet someone with fibro who's totally different than me. Someone who's, I know nurses that are have fibro and they're still working. Whereas, me, I I have a lot of days where I'm bedridden or couch ridden and days where I need a mobility aid. So it all just depends. And some days I'm walking around just fine. I'm doing my thing. I'm moving, but it just depends on the day and the person.
So as we close, Anissa, what's some final words you want to give to our audience out there in regards to maybe some things that they're going through, how it impacts their relationships, friendships, and to make sure that they're living a life that is as happy as possible?
I have to say that therapy is a really good tool when you find the right therapist. I know it can be a big challenge for a lot of people because culture wise, society wise, I know from personal experience that when growing up, when I didn't know how to process emotions or like I would be mad at my parents, rightfully so, they would be like, you need therapy. So they would kind of throw it at me, even though they were the problem. They were definitely the problem. And it felt like a form of punishment in a way. And so I never wanted to do it. I never wanted to go into therapy because it felt like a punishment and it felt like, well, how is it going to help me too when they're the problem? But therapy can be a really good source, and especially if you find the right therapy to really bring balance into your life and really cope with a lot of things that are going on with the world that are very scary and very traumatizing. And I know it can be hard to access for a lot of people. And I don't know if people know that there's sliding scales. A lot of providers offer sliding scales or they offer scholarships. So it might just take a bit of research to find the right one and to find one that you can afford.